Hi, readers. I'm Jordan.
And I'm Katie.
And welcome to Not Another Heroine, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines, those swashbuckling ladies who have to work a little harder than expected for their happy ending.
We'd love for you to come read with us in our book club on the Fable app, where you can chat with us about your favorite scenes, vote for your favorite characters, and even help pick our next read. Or you can follow us on Instagram to get a sneak peek at upcoming content. This week, we're reading Graceling by Kristen Cashore, otherwise known as It's Like a Parachute Around Her Head.
And we are rolling with Graceling,
Woo, woo.
Part 1.
If you listen to our new intro, I probably don't need to say this, but obviously, if you can tell by my sexy announcer voice thing, I am sick.
You sound lovely, though.
Yeah.
It's very more mellow, Katie.
That's fair. So if I have any incoherent thoughts, just be like, oh, Katie, ha, 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 and then move on with your life. I apologize in advance.
Tylenol speaking.
Yeah. The NyQuil, just freaking out of my mind right now. It's fine.
I'm going to be going over all of Part 1, and you're going to pass out halfway through the narration.
Probably.
No comments.
If there's any long gaps where I'm not talking, it's because I'm snoozing.
Duly noted. I will try to be entertaining for you, just to keep you with us.
Honestly, though, this book, I love it with my entire soul. So that's probably a lie. I don't think you're probably going to be like, Katie, can you please shut up so we can get through this? And then 2 hours later, I'll be like, anyways, that's all the reasons that I love this book.
You know what? I can see why this place has such a beloved memory in so many people's reading journeys, because I wish I finished this book today, actually, this morning before we got together. And I wish that I had read it at 14, when I read Crown Duel, because I think I would have been much more invested in the characters.
Yeah.
It's still really good. There's so many cool themes and stuff that wasn't done normally when this book first came out. I think I wish I'd gotten to experience that.
Yeah, I think that's the bummer for me. I feel like a lot of books that are popular on Book Talk right now don't have the same kind of empowering message that some of the books that we got to read when we were kids. So it just makes me kind of bummed out for this generation of middle schoolers and high schoolers that don't have the Katzas and the Mels to kind of have as their what is the word?
It's too early in the podcast to ask what is the word.
You're telling me. I want to say goal dream. What are those words in real person talk? Someone you look up to?
A role model?
Oh my God, yeah.
Is that the word you were looking for?
That's what I was role model.
Oh my gosh, Katie. How much Tylenol did you actually take?
For legal purposes, we're not going to discuss that. But yeah, role models. They don't have the Katzes as the role models. And I feel there's some books, I don't want to take the old person, oh, everything was better when I was younger. But I feel Katz's story is so relatable as a teenager, where you start off and you're I don't need people and I don't want to ever get married and I don't feel emotion and I'm a crazy, uncultured, developed person. But then you find someone that's a very reasonable partner, and you're okay, maybe I can act like a reasonable person, and when it works, and you realize it works and they accept you for who you are completely. I don't know that I've read any books recently published that have that same kind of underlying message at the forefront. I don't know.
I would agree with that. I'm not reading as many YA books.
Oh, that's fair too.
So maybe that's on us too, but I do think there was this is going to sound awful, a little pretentious, a little boomery, I think.
Yeah.
But it felt like there was higher standards for publishing.
Yeah. I could see that.
15, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that there's something to be said for the ability of authors now to publish their own pieces. You don't have to be in the it club that, publishers only go back to these, 8 authors to write books and nobody else can break in. But I think it's harder to, what is that expression? It's shift the wheat from the stalk, or we're getting full country.
Oh. I have never heard that before. I don't know where you're going with it.
But like,
Please continue.
it's harder to find like the genuinely good books from the like okay mid books. You know what I mean? I probably could have just said that instead of trying to give some like country metaphor.
With the wheat from the farm,
wheat from the shaft, wheat from the. I don't know. I swear to God that's. Just ignore me. Anyways,
readers, if you know what phrase Katie is trying to use, please chime in. Let us know.
What did I say before? A dream, search dream, roll dream. We're actually just going to move on. We'll listen to that later and I'll be really embarrassed.
We can actually start talking about what happens in the book, maybe.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
So this section, our part 1, mirrors part 1 of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just stop when you get to part 2, you'll be solid. There won't be any spoilers. Katza is our heroine. If you couldn't figure that out yet, not Katniss, Katza.
Yeah,
she starts out in a dungeon and she's just taking out guards left and right. But she's pretty careful. She's administering this potion pill thing that will somehow ensure that each of these guards that she's knocking unconscious awakes with no memory of what happened to them. And we learn very quickly, like there's a lot of action packed into the first couple pages of this book where she is in this dungeon taking out guards because she's trying to rescue this elderly man who's been imprisoned in this random castle that Katza and her super secret spy team have infiltrated. And she's almost done. Like she's kind of gotten all the way through, and one of the guards faces off with her and recognizes right away that she's a Graceling. Cue the title of our book. But the guard says this with like some disgust, and he taunts her about what color eyes she has. And at this, she's like a little exasperated. She just proceeds to knock him unconscious. She's like, I've heard this before. Just kind of fuck off, dude.
Nothing new.
And yeah, and it's very easy for her. She's like, it's as easy as breathing to kind of get rid of these guards one by one. Mm-hmm. It's like she does dungeon rescues every single day, which she kind of does.
The dream.
That's what about. Right? And we're dumped in this world. We meet Katza right away, and all of these little things are thrown at the reader. So like about Graceling. So you've already read this book. I have not. And I'm like, oh, well, what's a Graceling? Well, clearly they have 2 different colored eyes, but the whole Graceling effect is very much like X-Men. Some children, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point.
And it's kind of the same reactions, like from the general population that you see in the X-Men universe, is that so some children in this world are born with 2 different colored eyes, and this indicates that the child is gifted in some way. Not like nerdy gifted, like going to AP Calc. It's like this child will have some special powers to be revealed at some point as they grow older, either in late childhood or like their early preteen years. And this gift could be as mundane as being an excellent swimmer or just being a total badass like Katza. So she's got like unearthly speed and strength and coordination to become the most graced fighter in the land. The kind of shitty thing about being born with all these powers, though, is that the minute a child is born with Graceling eyes, so 2 different colors, right? They go to live with the king of their country until their gift manifests. So like you're just chilling in your village and pop a baby out, because that's how it works. And oh shit, they have 2 different colored eyes. I guess we're going to give our kid away to go live at the castle with the king or queen, whatever. So they do this because the king or the royal family wants to evaluate how useful this graced child will be. And if it's something useful like controlling the weather or being an awesome fighter, they get to stay living at the castle and working for the crown, like they belong to the country. If it's completely pointless, they are sent back to their families in total shame. Like, if you can hold your breath for a very long time, you're not going to snake the castle. Like that's not that special. So the general sense is that no one really likes the Gracelings because no one likes people that are different. But the government takes advantage of them when they can.
Mm-hmm. And I think so. In the kingdom that Katza's from, it's called like the Midlands, I think. That's where the Gracelings immediately go into like government service when they're children and they're like grace manifests. But there's some kingdoms in this book that doesn't happen. Specifically, the one that one of the characters is from that we'll find out later. Oh man, I forgot what his kingdom is from. We'll get to that later, but there's at least one kingdom in this like book where people with graces are like respected, and it's just seen as like a cool extra thing, like, oh, you know, they've been graced and they have this ability, and that's like totally fine and wonderful. But in the Midlands, run by a not great guy, and he's just taking advantage of children.
So when I went to start, I think it's the third or second book in the Graceling series, I realized that there is a map in the very front of the book,
yeah,
like most fantasy books include. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, this would have been really helpful to look at as I was reading it, because it has all of the kingdoms. Like here, Katie, I'm going to show you. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, oh my god, I'm gonna be real. Whenever I'm reading a fantasy book, I just skip past all of that beginning stuff, and it's always halfway through that I'm like, God, I wish I had a fucking map. And it's like I could have just read those first couple pages, and I would be provided all of the information. It's almost as if they include that on purpose because you need a map sometimes, but it's fine.
Or I don't know, pronunciation guidelines.
Oh my god,
skip those too, and you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, the worst thing is when you get through a whole book that has a bunch of like confusing fucking names in it, and the like last like extra bonus content at the end of the book is a pronunciation guide, and you're like, why the fuck was this not at the beginning? Oh, I think some of the Sarah J. Maas books I think has that at the end, and I'm like, this is too late to be helpful. I already have the pronunciations in my brain, like too late.
There's another interesting thing that happens in this scene, which is we get a flashback to Katz's childhood, which we get a lot of flashbacks, I think, in the beginning of this book in part 1, but not as much as you progress throughout the story.
Yeah.
And she uses these flashbacks, she being Kristen Cashore? Kristen Cashore?
Yeah,
I don't know how you say her last
Kristen Cashore? Cashore? Sorry.
Yep, we apologize. The author uses flashbacks to kind of give you a better sense of the world. So as Katza is taking out these guards, we get this flashback to this time when she was a child, probably, I don't know, 8 or 9, would you say?
Yeah, she's like young kid before puberty. So like that really fundamental like growth age.
So she's a princess. She is King Randa, king of the Midlands. She's his niece. And so, but she was born Grace. So she was already going to live with the king to begin with. But then she was born graced, and no one knows what her grace is yet. So she's at this dinner, formal event kind of thing. And this very sleazy nobleman just kind of makes a grab for her. And child Katza just backhands the shit out of this dude and basically shoves his brain into his nose, killing him instantly in front of her uncle's entire court. Yeah. This is a very formative like experience, as it should be, right? For any child who just kills someone randomly without any kind of thought in front of everyone. But this is the event that kind of catapults Katza into becoming a raging death machine in service to the crown. Yeah. But it also is the cause of her extreme aversion to, I would say, death and killing. She's this amazing fighter, but she doesn't want to kill anyone. She's kind of got this horror of it. So, yeah.
I will say,
all of these things like in the span of 5 pages.
Yeah. I think that Kristen did a really good job with these backflashes because I think a lot of authors have a little bit of difficulty doing the whole like telling, not showing. But I think she really kind of like masterfully uses these flashbacks to give us these kind of like firsthand experiences from Katz's point of view of these like really formative experiences that kind of manifest into her like personality and the why behind her decisions later that like kind of irritate you. And you're like, oh my God, why is she acting this way? And it's like, oh, do you remember that flashback where she like accidentally killed some like sleazy dude when she was a kid? Like, that's why she's making these decisions.
Yeah, it's the way she designed the entire progression of this plot through the book is like perfection.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's fun too because it's subtle. Like I feel like when I first read this when I was probably in like high school, I think you're less attuned to her kind of character change and development because it's so subtle and you like don't really realize it's happening. And I feel like Katza doesn't even realize it's happening until it's like too late almost. But the second read through, it's like it's so well done, and like you can tell that she had the whole plot line like figured out, and she'd have these little subtle like, you know, this is why she's like this way, but this is, you know, what she could be. And it's really well done, and you see all the like little breadcrumbs when you read through it for the second time.
Yeah, a lot of these books that we're reviewing are so good as a reread.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah,
you enjoy it the first time as like the way you enjoy a movie the first time, and then like the movies that you like to rewatch, right? Pride and Prejudice, anyone?
Yes.
you notice the little things more,
Mm-hmm.
and it just makes you love the story even more.
Yeah.
But back to our story before we get too sidetracked. So Katza taking out guards in the dungeon, and then she encounters another guard. But this one is not like the others. He moves quicker, and he's wearing shiny earrings. So he's quite dapper
the
looking.
earrings.
The earrings.
Oh my God.
Also, he's got mismatched eyes as well. And Katza quickly kind of comes to the conclusion that she has encountered another Graceling fighter. But obviously, he can't be as good as she is because she's the best that ever was. That's kind of Katz's personality in a nutshell. Like, I am the best fighter. No one is as good as me. You can try, but and it's not like arrogance. It's just pure self-confidence.
It's so fun because a lot of the times when you have these characters that are like really assured of themselves, it comes off as very like cocky and like kind of unapproachable and like almost annoying sometimes. But Katza, she's just like, this is a fact. Like, there's nothing I can do to change this. There's nothing anyone else can do. Like, this is just what's going to happen. Like, I'm going to beat you in this fight. And so like, as you're reading it, you're like not irritated and it's not unbelievable because she just has this like unshakable faith in her abilities of like to be just a fucking like dominant in these fights.
It is so cool because that's not unusual in a heroine, right? Like we always get the like, oh, I'm the best heroine that ever was. I'm the best sword fighter. I've overcome like my short size to become like a killing machine.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always like a but though. But but the tall, handsome man mysteriously beat me for the first time ever. I wonder what role he'll play in my future. Like,
I think that's my favorite like part of this is Katza is never beaten. Like throughout the whole fucking book, she does not find someone that beats her in a fight. And I love that.
Oh my gosh, I was looking through like good quotes of this book, and there's one scene, I think it's a little bit later on in part 1, where they ask her something along the lines of, were you planning to just kill the moose with your bare hands? And she's like, contemplates for a second, maybe I could kill a moose with my bare hands. Maybe I should try it. And I'm like, you go, Katza.
Yep. There's a part later, I think it's probably like part 3 where she has that same interaction but with like a mountain lion, and that's like the first time that she's like, oof, that was like kind of hard. I didn't think I was really going to make it out of that one, but I did. And it's like, you fought a mountain lion with your bare hands. Like, is that really the threshold?
I love that scene. That's the threshold. It's mountain lion. That was the challenge for her.
Bare hands.
But this Graceling fighter that she encounters, not a mountain lion, but he does put up a good fight, and he finally offers her like a white flag. He's like, hands up, like claims he trusts her, and you know he's gonna back off. Like he's basically like, I don't know what your purpose here in the dungeon is, but it seems kind of sketchy. But I also support you, and I'm just gonna back off. And then Katza, being Katza, she just promptly smacks him upside the head, unconscious. And then she's standing over his body and briefly considers killing him, like, for the good of the mission, because, like, she doesn't have any more, like, forget-me pills left. She's like, maybe I should kill this dude. But he's got shiny earrings and he's kind of cute. And she's like, nah, he'll be fine. She just takes her chances on this one.
I think that kind of gets into the important, like, characterization of Katza, is that even though she knows, like, killing this random guy that's, you know, now a threat to their secret mission, she's still having this really huge, like, existential crisis about killing someone voluntarily. Like, I think that accidental death of that creepy guy, like, she holds that really, like, it's close held, and it kind of informs her decisions of, like, I know I need to kill this guy because he could threaten, like, the whole shebang, but also I don't want to be a killer.
Yeah, that's one of her big hangups. It comes up over and over again. It's just, if she lacks confidence in any area, it's this sense of identity where she has this, she perceives herself to be like a monster, and that it's completely skewed.
Yeah.
Like, she has been shaped to be a monster and she's not actually one. So she rescues, remember, she's in this dungeon to rescue this mysteriously kidnapped old man, who happens to resemble this Graceling guard she just took out. Like, same coloring, same earrings, just kind of, that's an odd coincidence.
Interesting. That's sus.
Yeah. So she grabs old man who's in bad shape, takes off on her horse, and reunites with her, like, hostage rescue team.
Her little posse.
Yeah. And it's quickly revealed to us that this old man that was kidnapped is a Leonid prince. So he is the elderly father of the Queen of Monsi. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, Monsi.
Yeah. So this is kind of where it gets a little confusion.
Yeah.
Confusion? I can't speak today.
It becomes confusion.
So there is the kingdom of Leonid, I believe.
I know. That's what
You know what? Let me.
I was about to check it too.
Yes, Leonid.
Okay.
Is the name of the country, and it's governed by King Roar. And King Roar has 7 sons, and King Roar's dad is this old man who kind of refused kingship. Like, he could have been king, and he decided not to be, because by the time he had the opportunity to wear the crown, he was really old and his son was already grown. So he's like a prince in name only kind of thing. And
Leonid is also the kingdom where people with graces are, like, respected.
Yeah, it's the only kingdom like that.
Yeah.
And so this prince, this grandfather figure, his daughter ended up marrying the king of another kingdom, so not Leonid. So she's a princess of Leonid, and she married into the kingdom of Monsi. And this becomes very important later.
Hold on to that little tidbit. Put it in your pocket.
Yeah, like, maybe make a flowchart so you understand all the family dynamics there. It makes more sense as you're reading. Kind of, you follow along pretty easily.
Yeah.
So they make it back. So she's got her team. They take this man back to the Midlands, where she meets up with a member of her, like, squad, basically, who happens to be Prince Raffin, who we don't get to spend a lot of time with, but we learn a little bit about. He's a really cool character. So Prince Raffin is her cousin, and he is the crown prince. So he's the son of King Randa. So one day Prince Raffin will be the king of the Midlands. And he's kind of a violent character. Like,
I could see that. He kind of gives me like tall, lanky nerd vibes.
Yeah.
Those, like, very, like, gentle characters.
Yeah. So she takes grandfather Leonid Prince, dumps him with Prince Raffin, and then she escapes to go with the rest of her rescue party. And so she comes up on a rescue party, like after she drops Old Man off, and she's kind of berating them for taking a nap.
I love this scene.
She comes up on them and they're all like chilling against the trees, like just chilling, hanging out. And Katza, who's like, why do you feel tired? I am never tired. Get on your horse. We're taking off. Like,
I feel like this is the first part where you kind of get an inkling of Katza's ability. So like they've obviously been up for like at least 24 hours at this point because, so they're out doing errands for King Randa, but they have this little side gig going on. And so that's why Katza had to like run back to the Midlands, drop off the elderly prince, and then, run back with her horse so nobody knew that they did this little escape side quest. But it just kind of shows that she's like kind of totally fine after kicking the butts of countless guards, and reasonably these other people are like sleeping and trying to recover, and she's like, get on your fucking horses, we're gonna go. It's like, girl, other people need to sleep. You don't have to, but
yeah. And I think maybe I might have confused us a little bit trying to describe this first section of the book, because there's so much you learn right in the beginning. So yes, we're dropped into Katza rescuing, this prince, but you also get this background information. So Katza is like the arm of the crown for the King of the Midlands. And her team that she was on this rescue mission with are like noblemen and officials in the court. And so they're all official people, but they also are part of this shadowy organization known as the Council. And like you were referencing, is like this is their side gig. So like this is them driving an Uber, right? They run this council, which is a kind of behind the scenes, like an NGO basically, for all of the kingdoms. So they go around trying to fix the wrongs, help the struggling. So if a kingdom has issues, or people in an area has issues and they can't bring it to their own like guards, their own police force, their own government, the council steps in to kind of take over and correct things. And yeah, it's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, this kind of feeds into like kind of the events in the background of this whole novel. Is like all of the kings are kind of dickheads to each other, and they like are constantly fighting and constantly like jockeying for land and power and like to just fuck over other like kingdoms. And so like the council was kind of like this, okay, so these kings are just gonna do, whatever fucked up things, but we need someone that's actually gonna like care for the people. And so this is Katza, and they kind of start to recruit other people who have, access, or maybe have like extra resources they could like donate to maybe just do a little bit of good.
Yeah, exactly. So Katza's this NGO council thing includes Katza, Prince Raffin, and then a dude named Gideon.
We'll get into him later.
Yeah, we'll get into Gideon later. I wasn't very nice to him when I was first describing him, but he's not bad.
That's fair.
And the king's spy master, Orr. So they all kind of reconvene. They make it back to the castle. They ditch their council disguises, and they come together to kind of evaluate the mystery of the kidnapped Leonid prince. So they stepped in to rescue him, but they didn't know why he was kidnapped. They cannot come to any like rational conclusions as to why someone would want to kidnap this royal elderly nobody, because he has no influence, no power anywhere. So they determined that while they're going to hide this Leonid prince, they're going to help him recover and not reveal that he's been rescued. Just keep it a mystery. So hoping that, I guess, the perpetrators would reveal themselves in some way.
I think they were scared also of it, like, maybe not happening again, but they're like, we're maybe gonna keep this to ourselves. Like, he's safe now, and like, yeah, the family is probably like wondering where he is, but there could be some bigger, scarier plot happening right now, like a coalition between like two different countries, and they're gonna invade someone or some like wonky, fucked up shit. So like, now that cute little soft grandpa is safe, like maybe let's figure out like why he got kidnapped in the first place so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and when you think about it, like, not like, crime is terrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But crime is even more terrifying when you don't have a why, and I think
Yeah.
that's kinda where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that meaningless violence
Yeah.
is horrifying.
Because I think that's even
Um,
kind of what they say in this book. Because they like describe the grandpa as just like an old guy who doesn't have a lot of like social power, and he just like hangs out with his cute little grandkids all day. And they're like, why the fuck is someone kidnapping this old man?
yeah, it's messed up, and, like, they just cannot figure it out. They're not puzzling it through. So meanwhile, conveniently, a visitor appears at the castle of King Randa. So they're in the Midlands, and it happens to be a relative of the missing prince who's been searching for his grandfather across the land.
Oh my God.
And
Here he is.
like, you have the silliest like shit-eating grin on your
Uh-huh.
face, and I feel the same way because this character, like, oh,
He's probably in my like top 3 or 4 favorite characters ever. And I feel like I forgot about this character. I don't want to reveal too much yet. But then like rereading this, I'm like, he is such a good example of what like teenagers and like preteens should see as like a good man. Like, very like in control of his emotions, like he's like open and he like wants to help people, like A plus, role model for people to like, don't end up with one of these like fuck boys that is being stupid. Like, find yourself this guy.
we haven't even named him yet.
I know.
Readers.
Name him.
So if you have not read Graceling yet, if you're just listening to us, meet.
He has the stupidest name. I will be real.
His name is Poe.
Prince Poe.
Like Mulan Poe.
Oh my God.
And so this happens to be that Graceling guard that Katza faced off against during her rescue mission. And so she encounters him again after he comes to King Randa's castle, and they're at a formal dinner. She's been ordered to attend by her uncle. And so she's sitting in this dinner, and he's across from her, like across the room. They're not sitting next to each other. They're not even nearby. But she sees him, and she finds him excessively unnerving.
Ugh.
And she's like way on edge. She's like, I don't like you. I don't know why I don't like you. Stay away from me. And like, I think you described this perfectly. She's just like arms up, full awkward, like left the dinner with no reason whatsoever because this dude was just she's not about that.
I love this whole scene. So like I can imagine it like perfectly. So imagine like this big, like ballroom, everyone's like talking and there's like a low, a pretty high like sound, like everyone like background noise, and she's just trying to eat, but there's this like super hot guy from across the room just like staring at her and smiling, like not in a weird way, but in a like, I'm making you uncomfortable, but it's like funny to me because you have no reason to be uncomfortable. Like you could just, like accept that I'm like kind of flirting with you across the like way, but you're just panicking. And it's like he knows. He's like, I'm just gonna continue to like press her buttons a little bit because this is like super hilarious. And she just starts to like panic. And I think it's in Harry Potter where like Hermione gets like more stressed and stressed and her like hair gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's exactly how I imagine this. She's just like panicking. And so eventually she just like stands up and everybody like stops talking and she's like, I'm gonna go. It's like, girl, just calm down.
This is the most graced fighter in the land. Like,
and a boy
takes out a mountain lion later. Like, and it's flirting. It's flirting that really puts her over the edge.
She's like Mel, but Mel 100 times more awkward.
Yeah, 100%. That's a lot of similarities there.
I love this scene.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So Poe's been at the castle okay, we should explain his name. His name is not actually Poe. So Poe is the name of a specific type of tree from the island country of Leonid that he's from. And it's because the leaves on this tree turn gold and silver during a specific season. And Poe's eyes are gold and silver. His full name is like Prince Greenling Tea Leaf.
Oh yeah,
something.
I think it's like Prince Greening or something. It's something really stupid sounding, which also just like adds to the adorableness of his character. Like he has this stupid name, but he's the most like laid back, chill character. He's like, yeah, that's my name. It's kind of stupid, but you know, my like friends and family call me Poe.
Yep, just Poe. I go by Poe.
And I feel like it's also, so let me add to the like hot factor really quick. Okay, so we already talked about his cute little earrings, but he has like multiple earrings, and I think they're in both ears. So just imagine like a little like tinkly tink 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 of a bunch of earrings like clinking in his ears. And then he also, we'll get into it later, the reasoning behind it, but he has a bunch of like rings on, and it's fine. Just so he has black hair, but I always imagine him as like kind of the pirate vibes with some like beachy blonde hair. Hair color, I feel like doesn't really matter.
It's because you have a thing for blondes, Katie.
Apparently.
Every single hero.
Apparently. But he
because
just
I was getting like Jack Sparrow vibes on this guy.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah. Because I just thought like a blonde Jack Sparrow. Like a little more like a surfery beach bum a little bit. But like those smart beach bums are like smart characters that are like chilled back and relaxed, but they have that like gleam in their eye of like, I understand everything that's going on right now, and I'm choosing to be like laid back, but I'm not stupid.
Yeah, can you tell we like Poe?
Yeah.
He's cool. Well, okay, Katza and her team, her council team, which is again Prince Raffin and Gideon and Orr, agree to kind of take Poe aside and loop him into the council's role in his grandfather's rescue, because Poe at this point didn't know where his grandfather was at. Well, actually, he probably does, because he ran into Katza. She whacked him upside the head.
Yeah, because I think, so when Katza leaves, I could be totally like misremembering the scene, but I kind of think she like leaves and he like goes and grabs her and he's like, hey, like I know that you were at the castle at the same day that all of a sudden my like grandpa's missing again. Like if you know something, like please just tell me, like please tell me he's safe. And it's this cute like scene where he's like, I know I don't understand like all of these weird like mechanisms and like political scandals, like, but please tell me my grandpa's okay. And it's like, oh, Poe.
He's so sweet.
I would let him into the like plans too if someone told me that.
So they do, right? Like they fill him in and they all collectively agree to still keep this rescue hidden. And Poe is also trying to figure out this mystery because he wants to know what happened and if it's going to happen again. So he decides to use this King Randus castle as a base for him to like branch out and go to all these other countries nearby to kind of, you know, investigate this mystery. So meanwhile, he and Katza strike up this friendship where he's like, hey, I'm a really good fighter too, like almost as good as you. Like maybe we can train together. And she's, well, you make me extremely uncomfortable, but yes, let's train together. And so they form this actually really sweet friendship, and that's all it is. It's a very it's friendship with swords and fighting and fists, but it's very cute.
Because I think it's important because like she kind of has maybe not flashbacks, but like thoughts that she's never been able to actually go like full send with another fighter when she's training, because like everyone else is kind of scared of her and they know, you know, they watched this happen where she just killed someone by like smacking him. And so everyone's a little bit scared of her. And so her training sessions have been very like controlled, and she always has to be like constantly thinking about like how hard she's hitting and like what she's doing. But now all of a sudden she has someone that like understands the stigma behind Gracelings and like how no one, you know, everyone wants to keep you at arm's length. And he's like just cool and hanging out and they're just sparring. So it's like this very like reasonable, you know, you have two like kind of marginalized characters that are like all of a sudden like find someone else that's marginalized and they're like, hey, we could be like friends maybe. Like you make me kind of like uncomfy sometimes because you're hot and you see too many things with your eyes, but we could be friends.
And on the friends note, like Poe does Katza a solid and he's like pure friend mode. He goes one day, do you know that your buddy Gideon is probably in love with you. So what's happening there? And Katza, typical, goes full awkward. I don't understand
What are you
emotions.
talking about?
I can't feel emotions. Boys are gross.
Mhm.
And she's like, no, you're being ridiculous. Of course he doesn't feel that way.
Mhm.
And Gideon is like a senior nobleman in the court. He's like a very, like, I don't know, trusted
Yeah.
advisor to the king. And he's not a bad dude.
No.
Like, and I think he's described as handsome as well.
Yeah.
So we just don't get a lot of interactions with him.
Mhm. And I will
but
say that like Poe doesn't tell Katza that like Gideon likes her to be like that guy, like, oh, you know, like your friend like likes you, and to like make their friendship awkward. I feel like it was more because Gideon started showing up at their like training sessions, and he would be like watching because it was always, you know, like generate a crowd because you see like two really competent people doing something they're good at, and like you just can't not watch, you know. But he would watch and he'd like walk out halfway through looking all pissed off. And like Katza would kind of notice, but she's like, oh, maybe he's just being like a weirdo. But like Poe obviously has more than two brain cells and some kind of emotional like intelligence. And he's like, girl, he's like acting all weird and being kind of a dick to you sometimes because he likes you. And she's like, what?
impossible.
No fucking way. But also Gideon gives me the vibes of like one of those people that's very like in control and like just assumes like his plan for how people are going to act is what's going to happen and is just very like, this is my life plan and like this is how people are going to act towards me, and you know, I'm going to hit this age and then I'm going to get married and then I'm going to run my cute little, you know, duchy or whatever his kingdom, mini kingdom is called, and like that's how life's going to be. And then Katz is like, no.
That sounds about right for Gideon, if I'm thinking back to his character.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at like thinking of him in that lens as like a super type A, like he has his life planned out, and he's like, of course Katza and I are going to get married. I'm going to pick the right time to tell her, and then she's obviously going to say yes, and then it'll be fine. And then Poe comes along and looks like a pirate, and
hot.
Gideon is seeing Katza for the first time, kind of like off her game.
Yeah.
And he's like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, do I need to do something? Like, Q, like, takes out a hair comb. Like, let me fix my hair. Let me fix my coat. Like, I'm handsome, too.
I just imagine, like, he's watching them, like, fight and have fun. And he kind of, like, sniffs down. And he's like, I don't smell. Like, why does she not, you know, fight and have fun and laugh with me like that? Like, what is happening? My breath doesn't smell either. I do not understand.
Poor Gideon. I feel bad for him now.
I do too. But he's also just like kind of one of those characters that kind of irritates you in the like, you can't just assume that people are, you know, going to do the things that you want them to do. Like everyone has agency. Like, why are you so bent out of shape that things aren't going the way that you want them to? I mean, I get it. I too am that way, but also it's maybe not healthy.
Well, he quickly gets his dose of reality.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
King Randa decides to send Katza and Gideon off on like this enforcing function. It sounded like I said function.
A little bit. I was going to ignore it. Do we need to flash back to the role model conversation?
Yes, we do. So, enforcing function. And the king wants Katza and Gideon to force this nobleman to have his daughters agree to this betrothal. And without kind of going too much into this, this is the moment where Katza's like, I don't want to force people to do anything anymore. I'm really tired of the king kind of using me as a tool. And she just decides to not do it. And on this trip, this is when Gideon, because Poe doesn't go with them. So Gideon has his opportunity to kind of make a move on Katza. And she's like, whoa, man, we're friends, right? Like, nothing more. Where he just gets a little mopey. Like, he doesn't take it great, but he's like, well, this is Katza. So she'll change her mind. I'm type A. I will get her to change her mind.
And I know you just like literally 4 seconds ago said that you didn't want to get into the scene, but I love everything about this little chunk, like this plot point. So like, first of all, like them being like enforcers, like Katza always feels kind of conflicted about it because she's like being this, like rabid dog on a chain, and like King Randa is the one that's like directing her, and she doesn't have any kind of like agency, but she's forced to do this thing where like, this uh royal nobleman or whatever is just trying to protect his like daughters. Like he doesn't want to force them to marry someone and go to like a very dangerous part of the kingdom. And he's like, no, you can't tell me to marry off my kids. And King Randa's like, oh, you're going to tell me no? Well, I'm going to send my killing machine, niece to go fuck you up. And then you're going to. And so Katza has this really like existential crisis about like what her role is and how she's going to like exercise agency over her like destiny. And then she kind of has this point like, and I think it's kind of brought on by Poe kind of like showing her that she's not just a rabid dog and she's actually like a person worthy of like people's respect and maybe even like dignity. And she's like, no, what? I'm not going to do this. And I might get in trouble and it might cause problems, but like, I'm not going to hurt this man who's just trying to protect his family. And so it's like this very kind of like catalyst moment. Like, she was a caterpillar before and then she turns into a butterfly and she's like, I'm a real person. But I love it because I feel like we've all had that kind of moment where our lives feel like they're not in our control. And then she's like, no, like I can decide to not do these things that I don't want to do. And I love this scene.
I forgot actually about this scene because I was reading through my notes as you were talking about it. I'm like, oh, this is the scene where shit goes down with Gideon and Poe.
Yeah.
So as we kind of touched on earlier, Gideon confesses his feelings for Katza during this moment. And as he's confessing his feelings, and he's not obviously getting the response that he wants, he starts hating on Poe because obviously he's identified the threat. He knows why Katza's, Katza wouldn't have been interested regardless if Poe was present or not.
Yeah.
I don't think Gideon can accept that, but he starts hating on Poe, like full. This fucker, what does he have that I don't? Like, I am a duke. I have a mansion. I have lands.
I can give you a future.
Yeah, and he says something like along the lines of like, I'm not just this random thug. And this is nearly word for word what Poe had said to Katza at an earlier time. Like, it was as if Poe had been quoting Gideon before Gideon said anything. And this causes Katza to kind of sit back and she kind of does the math a little bit and realizes that, holy shit, Poe isn't graced with being a good fighter. He's graced with being a fucking mind reader. And yeah.
I will say that Katza, at least my kind of understanding of her character, is she is so disturbed by this fact because like in the book, this is like a huge, like monumental, she has like a little bit of a meltdown when she figures it out. But I think she is so scared of someone reading her thoughts because she's a character who has never had any agency over her life. Her uncle has been controlling, using her as this like rabid dog. And she assumes that she's not smart. Like you kind of get these like tidbits throughout the story that she's like very self-conscious and she sees herself as just like a wild animal and like not a person capable of like higher thought. And then all of a sudden you get this character who she's like opened herself up to, like she's not really open to a lot of people and she thinks they're friends. And then all of a sudden this is a person that has the capability to like see her thoughts and judge her, lack of intelligence. And so she's very like self-conscious about it, like reasonably. And so it's like a full meltdown. Like, she's like, I hate this man. Like, I think I might go kill him. Like, he cannot be free to just steal people's thoughts.
She feels totally betrayed.
Yes, yeah.
And it's kind of, so she has like these two back-to-back moments that are just kind of shaping her life immediately. And that's her refusing to act on her uncle's orders. So that's her first transformative moment. And then there's this second moment where she realizes that she became close to this individual who she cannot even comprehend trusting anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so she can get in return to King Randa, and she immediately goes and confronts Poe. Like, she's gonna kill him.
This motherfucker.
And like, reason 1001 why Poe is such a great example of a healthy friendship,
Mm-hmm.
a positive male lead, because he's very calm and controlled, and he doesn't react to her. Like, he doesn't respond to her emotional turbulence with equal emotional turbulence.
Yeah.
Which is something like I think most people do naturally. Like, if someone confronts you and they're angry, like, you're going to get defensive and angry yourself because, like, why are you accusing me of something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am angry because now I'm forced to defend myself. And Poe doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Not at all. Because he's like a empath mind reader type, he knew how Katsu was going to react to him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of had time to prepare for it, but he allows her to express all this mistrust and fear, and allows her to process it while still not budging. Like, he doesn't allow her to be irrational with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think
it's such a great scene.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, this scene, I think, is very powerful as like a model of healthy relationships, and even just like platonic ones where you're just friends, of those people that are kind of like worth their weight in gold, that, you know, you come at them really upset about something, really like on fire and angry and like kind of spiteful and, you know, spitting at them. And they just kind of like, okay, like, I understand why you're mad. Like, I understand like what I did was wrong and I'm really sorry about that. But they don't like meet your anger. They're just very calm, very collected. They like recognize your hurt. But then they kind of try to like find a way together to work past it. And so by like the end of this scene, he's like, you know, calming her down a lot, which I think is, first of all, very important. He's like, hey, like, I understand you're mad, but like, would you listen to my side of this? And she's like, well, I guess. And he's like, I can't read thoughts. I can only read the thoughts when they're like directed at me. So like, I can't read what you're thinking right now. But if you all of a sudden were like, oh, Poe is tall, that's something that would like register on my like radar. And so she's like, okay, I mean, that's still like mind reading though. And he's like, but is it? Like, it's just like a defensive mechanism, basically. Like, I can know when someone's going to like betray me, or I can know when someone's like lying to me if they think in their head, but it's not like I can reach in at any point and like take what I want. And so she's like, okay, like, I'm still upset that you didn't tell me, but that's better than you being like an actual mind reader. And so by like the end of the scene, they're having like an actual like healthy relationship about boundaries. And like he kind of explains like ways that she can like not have him read her thoughts, like to go like, you know, almost a meditative state and like don't think about anything. So they find like a workaround together, which I think is a very good like conflict resolution tool. And I love that this is just like, you know, an exhibit of a healthy relationship. And so like, he's like, you're calm, you're in control of your thoughts and emotions and like your actions too. Like, you can decide whatever you want to do. And so she takes all of that she just learned from this conversation when she goes then to have this, you know, showdown with her uncle.
So, and Poe's grace, this ability to sense like action and thought towards that's directed at him, is what makes him such a good fighter with Katsa, because he can sense when she is moving towards him, because he's anticipating her moves basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're pretty healthily matched in the arena. But yeah, like you said, almost immediately after this really like emotionally taunt scene, King Randa summons Ketsa to the throne room because he has learned that she returned from this mission without having completed it, like flat out refused. And so she's kind of on edge a little bit. She's like, well, this is the first time I've ever said no to my uncle, so I'm not sure what's going to happen, but it's not going to be good. And she goes to the throne room, and there's King Randa sitting on his throne, surrounded by his entire royal guard, like hundreds of people, would you say? And then archers are along the wall, and they're all aimed at her because this is the most dangerous fighter in the entire land. He doesn't know what she's going to do. Apparently, he's going to threaten her because that's a good move to the most dangerous
super
person
good
you know.
move.
Yeah, and so she shows up, and typical Katza, she's not phased. She's like, "Huh, this is interesting," and she just very calmly explains like this calmness she just learned from Poe because she just had this full out like battle with him, and explains how she's not going to do these evil things on behalf of her uncle, and what are you going to do if I say no? And he just kind of sits there gaping at her like, well,
what do you mean no?
I have all of these, like I have all of these soldiers, and she just explains how she's going to take out every single one of these soldiers and then throw a knife at King Randa's throat if he decides to attack her. And so with that, she just kind of turns on her heel and stalks out of the throne room. Like, end of story. Like, everyone's just standing there because, it doesn't matter. Like, and it kind of goes to show we don't know if she could have taken out every single guard in that room. She has the confidence that you believe her, but she's never been tested on, I think, at that level. And I think it's that self-confidence that kind of comes across to everyone where they're like, they don't know what she can't do. So no one wants to try her. So I think it's equal parts fighting and just how she carries herself, which is such a good lesson for like young readers as well. Like, be confident in yourself. And that's hard. It's hard to do when you're young and you have all these insecurities. But Katz is such a good example of like, she knows she's good and she owns it. There's no, she's not humble because she doesn't need to be. And it doesn't serve her. It doesn't suit her either. I just love it. It's this very like powerful woman moment where I could see it. I could see it in front of my face. I just want to see it in a movie.
I know. I agree. Because it's kind of this existential crisis moment. Because I think we've kind of mentioned it throughout. Like, Katza doesn't have a very healthy sense of self. Like, she has been treated as like this rabid dog on a chain that her uncle controls, and at any moment he can take her off that chain and she'll go commit acts of violence because she's just a wild animal. And you kind of get her inner monologue during this scene of her thinking when she walks in that she's going to kill him because she can't control her anger, and what is the other choice is just leave him alive where he can hunt her down for the rest of her life. But she has this moment where she's like, no, I'm not going to kill you. Like, I'm not a rabid animal. Like, I'm a person and I'm choosing to let you live, and your actions aren't going to force me to make some action that I'm going to regret. And it's this cool sense of self evolution. Like, you kind of get her character development of where she sees herself. And the scene before that point is a servant comes into the room where her and Poe are talking, and he's like, hey, the king requested you need to come immediately. And Poe immediately kind of panics because he's like, what the fuck did you do? And she's like, I maybe made a little bit of a mistake, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. And he very calmly is like, you are going to go in and you're going to do whatever you need to do, but don't make him force you to do anything. And she's like, wow, I didn't know I could have agency. And he's like, you're a person, just whatever you're going to do, make sure it's something you want to do. And she's like, huh. It's just this cool little coaching moment where she, turns into the supreme version of herself.
This is kind of like a very extended prologue of the actual story. Part one's pretty long. I'm not sure.
I think it's
it kind of picks up.
30%, 32%.
Yeah. So it's about 170 pages. But it's kind of just all it does is serve to give develop Katza as a character, show what she's experienced, and establish these relationships right off the bat. And it's all done to just kind of propel you into the actual story, which starts around part 2.
But it's weird though, because when you're reading it, you're kind of in the soup. This feels like all the action. But then when you get done and you kind of analyze it, you're like, this is really just laying the groundwork, even though it's, a whole third of the book. But when you're reading it, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then it almost kind of cuts off and goes into the next, actual part of the story.
Yeah. You kind of don't know what's coming, which is which is fun. Like at this point, I had no idea what was going on with this kidnapping thing.
That's fair. They keep it very, because I feel like sometimes it's easy to kind of forecast what's going to happen, because a lot of books follow the same formula, and you're like, okay, like I kind of know, there's these little hints, and that normally means this is going to happen. But this one, like, she does such a good job of like giving you just enough to understand what's going on, and even like maybe a little bit of confusion about what's going on, but it like matches what the characters know, and then she really drags it out until you're like, holy shit, what happened?
Exactly. So this is why we're stopping at part 1. So
yep, it's a good stop point.
You'll join us for part 2, and we'll get more into Katza and Poe's adventures. So
love. If you liked part 1, you're gonna love part 2 and part 3 even more. I will say you will suffer extreme heartbreak in part 3. Just emotionally prepare yourself.
But there's a good ending. Like we don't read books that don't have good endings.
Nope.
So it's kind of our rule here.
What is that one Harry Potter quote? Since I'm feeling very Harry Pottery, the whole when they're reading tea leaves, I think it's book 3, and he's like, "You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it." That is this book.
Oh man, yeah, that's to this book to a T.
Yep, you're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy. Jordan, shame. Oh, you're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it. Oh God.
Okay. Are we good?
Yes.
Do we have any more?
I don't think so, because if you let me continue, I'm just going to talk about how much I love Poe.
We have more than enough time to do that in part 2 and part 3.
That's fair.
Part 3 is going to be a lot of Poe talk.
Oh yeah, Poe talk.
We should have that's going to Poe talk is going to be the name of episode 3. Okay. With that, please join us on our book club to discuss how much you loved part 1 or hated part 1.
True.
Like I would be very curious to hear if you did not like part 1 and decided to DNF this book. So join us there, and we will chat with you and see you next time. So from our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page.
So oh fuck, I don't even know how to start this. Okay. So this is the second time we actually recorded Graceling part 1 because the first time we had a bit of an audio mishap and we only ended up getting Katie's side of the actual call.
Yep.
But funnily enough, we decided to keep we decided to keep a little snippet for all of you dear readers.
Yes.
Katie, do you want to explain what you were trying to explain?
So in typical Katie fashion, as soon as the little like record button is pressed, all higher thought leaves my brain, and I am incapable of using anything above like a first grade vocabulary. And so I was trying to describe the scene where Katza's being like in this awkward stare down with Poe across the like dining room or whatever, and she's like getting like more and more like frazzled about it. And the word I was looking for is a frilled neck lizard. If you've seen Holes, it's like, when they like flap out their thing and they get all scared. That's how I imagined Katza looked, except it probably took me a solid like 3 minutes to get to that. And the metaphors for, me trying to explain to Jordan this like mildly obscure animal, will be included shortly.
We have saved them for you. We couldn't resist not including this little snippet. So
yes. So for your viewing pleasure,
we give you the frilled neck lizard
eventually. It's like my like defensive like lizard motion, like those lizard serpent things that have the big old I'm waving my hand. Yeah. I'm waving my hand around my face as if you can see me right now, but it's like a parachute around their head. No. These are like real creatures.